So welcome everyone. We're right at the hour and I don't want to keep you waiting. This is a 1-hour class. If you're new, my name is Cathy. I teach art, watercolor. I do this because it's a gift naturally was given to me. And I give this class or these classes at no charge because it was a gift that was given to me free of charge. So I learn each week, I practice, I try different techniques and try to pass them on to you, and hopefully it gives you some joy and some entertainment, and you come up with something just as beautiful as you could do. So if this first creation that you come up with isn't exactly what you want, then I encourage you to try again. You'll have the technique today, and it's really not a difficult one. It is interesting how it turns out, and I hope you all enjoy it. So we're just going to take 3 deep breaths. Take a deep breath, and at the top of the breath, just hold it for a moment, and then just release. And you can release fast or slow. That's entirely up to you. But we just take a moment to get into art mode. And after we do that, I just ask while we're doing that, just if there's anything going on that's troubling you, just set that aside in the parking lot. I'm not saying it's going to go away, but sometimes burdens are lightened just by stepping away for a while. So give yourself this gift of 1 hour to focus on something different rather than your troubles. So let's take a deep breath in, hold it, and out, and release your shoulders. Just really drop them down. We hold a lot of tension here. So nice deep breath in again. Hold it and out. And one more time. Deep breath in and out. And really drop those shoulders down if you're able. Just give a little shake if you can. And with that, we'll get started. We'll do the fun part. We'll put on some color. So our picture today is not from a sketch. So we're going to end up with something very similar to this. The colors that we're using, again, are cobalt blue or sky blue, green, and brown. So with that, we'll just go right ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, I should let you know. You need two containers of water. Keep one clear, one for cleaning your brushes. You'll need some paper towel. Brushes, I have a number 6, a number 5, and 2 number 3s. And it's up to you to use, they're all just pointed brushes. This one's a little bit flatter, will hold a little bit more water. So I'm going to start with that bigger brush. And I'm going to go right into this is wet on dry. So I'm going to go right into my cobalt blue. And I'm going to do a stripe of blue across the top of my canvas. You see, I'm not even worried that it's a straight line. Let's not worry too much about it. So we've just got a stripe of blue across the top.
If I'm using from the tube, do I go right into that paint and use it, or do I water it?
You'll wet your brush first and just get a little bit of that paint. Okay. So it will become watery just because your brush is wet.
And what is that, about 1 inch that you were going?
It's about 1/2 inch, and I'm just going across the top. So not very far across, or not very far down. I just want that blue at the top. Now I'm going to wet my brush, clean my brush off and just get it wet with water. And I'm going to start underneath that with the clear water. I'm pulling that color or wetting my paper so that that color starts to move down. And I'm going halfway down the page with the water, just halfway. It looks like I've got a little bit of water has run, so I'm just going to use paper towel and just dry that up. But I only want to go halfway down the page with the water. You're probably using your canvas and it's sitting flat. Mine is on an easel, so mine will run a little bit easier. You can pick up your canvas. You can pick it up and let that run. So let's go back up to the top. Now we've got some water and a little bit of blue movement. Let's go back up to the top and put another swipe of blue, darker, a little bit darker. And again, we're going to run that water, just clear water, let that blue run right down to the center. So if it's not running, and you're not getting a little bit lighter each time, then just add a touch of color. Again, we just want dark at the top and let it run down to the center. So you can see we've got darker blue at the top, and as we get down to the center, just because it's watered down, it's lighter. So we're just putting dark at the top and wetting and letting that paint run just to the center line. So that will continue to run, even though you may not see it, but it will still move a little bit because there's moisture on your paper. So now we're going to take our canvas and we're going to completely turn it upside down. Now mine's on an easel. Maybe you don't have to completely turn yours upside down, but we're going to work from the other end. And we're going to get wet from the middle all the way up to the top. So draw a center line. So I wanted that more in the middle. I'm just going to move mine a little bit. We want to leave a white line between, you want a space between top and bottom. So we're going to wet the whole top all the way down to the middle again, just with clear water. This time we're doing it a little bit different because we want it to be a little bit thinner and lighter. And just check and see if there's any spots that you've missed. If you hold your canvas or your paper off to an angle with a light reflection, if you've missed any spots, they'll be dry. So we don't want it soaking wet, but you do want it wet enough that when you put blue on, it's going to run. And we can see the darkness of this blue.
Kathy,
Yes.
we want a line of no water in between the top and the bottom.
Yes, you want to have this clear, this completely dry. If that has got wet, just take your paper towel and just tap it dry. You want a line in between where there's no paint and no water. So if you just run a piece of paper towel across that line, it should give you a nice dry spot. And then we're going to take that blue, and because we've got water on there, we're going to take that blue and we're going to let that blue run again. So if you have to add a little bit of blue, that's okay, but not a whole lot. We want this to be lighter. We can just add a little bit more water just to lighten that up. And again, just have that line clear in between.
Is the blue this time evenly distributed?
It's evenly distributed, yes, and so it will be a little bit lighter. So when I turn my canvas back over, you can see that the sky is darker than the water. So it's not looking like much of anything right now. It just looks like we've got blue up top, a little white line in the middle, and some blue, really light blue at the bottom. And already we're going to move on to our trees. So we're going to work with green. And whatever green you work with, just stick with that green. If it's light, if it's olivey, just stick with the same green. And we're going to make just, now this is tricky. Actually, let's make the line at the top. We're going all the way across at the very top of our white space, just so we know where our trees will start. So there is a white space below this, all the way across. So you're just making a horizon. And we'll make another band above that, about a 1-inch gap between them. We have the white here. We have our first green line, which is our horizon. We're leaving a 1-inch gap and we're painting another green line. And you'll know why we're painting that green line in a moment. But if we put I want your trees all to be at the same spot. So your trees are going, the foliage of your trees are going to be above that line. So you need the 2 green lines. We're going to do 5 trees. So if I start at the far, now I've got one on there, but if I start at the far side, 2, 3, 4, and I'm leaving a gap between the 4th and the 5th tree. So it looks kind of kindergartenish right now, but not to worry. And once you've got those on, we're going to fill that in. And don't worry, you want your tree to look like a tree, so it doesn't have to be even. This is not about perfect trees. This is about dimension and reflections in water. So we're only trying to get on the shape of a tree. So play with what you think you would see if you were in the forest looking at a tree from a distance. So they're all a little bit different. I'm just going to work with my green just to cover over that edge of that circle that I did so it doesn't stand out quite like a circle or an oval. If I put it a little bit darker on the outside edges or pull that color in. So we just want to have the shape of, this is the tops of 5 trees. So this is only the top of the tree. And again, I'm not worried about it being perfect. I'm just looking for the shape of a tree. And they don't always all have to look the same. And you can see I'm adding a little bit more each time. And so it adds a little bit more depth to the tree. So as one tree starts to dry a little bit, go back on it and just add here and there. I'm just using just brush strokes, just light brush strokes, just to give it a little bit more, the look of a tree. I've got a combination on my tray between a sap green and a leaf green. They're just sort of blended together. That's just what's on my tray. So if you want to blend a couple of greens together, that's fine. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We're just looking for the shape. So because some of my trees are dry or a little bit dry, I'm going back on and I'm adding a little bit more again. So play with these trees. Just play with it. Even if you go a little bit or they get a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, you don't all have to be exactly the same height. And they're certainly not all the same shape. I'm just going to wet my brush just with plain water, and I'm going to touch on the green line that I did, and I'm going to blend that green line across. I can pull the green from below up as well. What I want is a really soft green in between those two. So I'm just using plain water with my brush and just softening the line that I've got at the top, moving that paint down. So I'm not actually adding any additional paint. I'm using the paint that I've got that's already there, so that I have a really soft green. And you can see some parts are lighter and some parts are darker. This is going to be part of the foliage or the grasses that you will see between each tree. And remember, these are just the tops of the trees. We haven't done the stems yet. So take a deep breath and just drop your shoulders. This is just a piece of paper. This can be repeated. This is not life-threatening. Now that bottom line that we've got a white space between the blue and the green. We're going to pull that green down just with plain water. I'm going to go from side to side and fill in that white space in a really faint light green. So I'm just using a brush with plain water. And again, I'm doing the same process, just going from side to side. So you can see I've just got a faint, very faint line of green below, which is a reflection in the water from the shore. So it's very faint going across. And if you have some white spots in there, that's okay. I'm going to that burnt umber or brown, which is quite a dark brown. It's not black, but it is a brown color. So I'm going to take this brown and I'm going to work on the same side of each tree. And I'm going to come down the side of the tree to the base of the tree on each tree. And this is where the sun doesn't show on the tree because it's in shadow. And they don't all have to be identical. You can see I've got some that are different, some that are a little bit wiggly on the bottom, some that are thinner in the middle. And while you're doing that, we are just about at halftime. So I'm going to read our joy, may you know joy meditation card for everyday living. So you continue with your shadows on the bottoms of your treetops, and I will read this card, may you know love. Love, beautiful love. May you love yourself. May you be kind and gracious and generous to yourself. And may this love radiate to the world around you, to all beings and creatures, and to the environment. May pure love drive your actions and ideas. When you find yourself at a crossroads, ask yourself, what would love do? May you know love. I think we've read that before, and I really quite like that. It'd be interesting to see if you could remember that later and ask, what would love do?
You know, when you did the second green line, did you
Yes.
completely cover the white, or should we still have a piece of white?
No, I did cover the white. I
All the
did
white
cover the
covered.
white. So go ahead and cover that over now.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And so just give that a few swipes from side to side. It doesn't have to be not too well thought out. It just needs to be a few swipes. So now we're going to run from the center of our tree down to the green line. Now, some of those tree trunks might be a little bit thicker. They might have some bumps on them. See, I've given a few little ridges. This one might have two little sections that go to that tree. So I've got a little section in the center that I've left, just a little dot, just a hint of a second branch. The bottom part of your tree is in shadow. So that needs to be a shadow too. So when you put that shadow in at the bottom of your tree, that's where you'll see your tree trunk will naturally meet that. So, and again, they don't all have to be the same. This one might be a little bit wiggly, a little bit thicker. So I'm deliberately making them different. And this one could just go straight down. Ah, that's too boring. I want a second branch. It is, as in all things in the forest or growing from the ground, trees don't just sit there idle. They come out of the ground. So we're going to give a little bit of earth around the base of the trees. So I'm still using the same brown, and I'm just pulling up with my brush, and they can just be clumps, or they could be like a grassy type. So each one needs to have a little bit of grounding of some fashion. If you're able to take that brown into a separate tray, a separate place where you mix your paints, and just add some water. So we're just going to lighten that brown up just ever so slightly. And then below that second, we've got the first line, the second line where the tree sits, and then we've got a little green space in between. And we're going to just pull some of that brown just with the side of our brush underneath the trees, but no longer or taller than your tree is. Now, while you're there, beside that, you're going to pull down some green. And you can do it on either side or on just one side. We're going to use the green, and we're just going to pull that down as well. So it's the same green that we've used above. So you're just using green now beside the brown. So if you've got this far and these stripes that you put in the water are still wet, clean your brush with and just dampen it with clear water. And you're going to run your brush from side to side until you see some movement. So not to overdo it, but you want to see some movement in the water in your reflections. And again, very clear water at the very bottom of your reflections. Just lightly go back and forth and you're blending the paint that is in the water. So you're just going back and forth very gently, just with clear water. It looks like on mine, I've lost a little bit of the green. So I'm just going to add a little bit more green because of the green is quite predominant in the trees. I'm just going to add a little bit more green. And then I'm just going to move that a little bit.
Where did you add the green? Back to the
Yeah,
trunk?
it was too, no, it was too light on my shadows in the water, my reflections. So I just added a little bit more. It just looked too light. In amongst the greenery with the trees, I'm going to add some more green, or where the brown is, I'm going to add some green. So I want some grasses up in there. I'm just using my brush, just tapping the paint from the side, just to give me some looks of grasses in. So with the green that I've got on my brush left over from doing the green in amongst the brown foliage, I'm going to do another swipe just across the bottom, just so it looks like a shoreline. You can see it's not completely even. I've just brushed until I have a dry brush effect. I go back over that again. I've added green foliage or grasses. The green that I had left over on my brush, I just swiped back and forth so that it gives me more of a shoreline. Well, because watercolor dries 20 to 30% lighter than when you put it on, your trees will be dry. And if we put on a fresh green, it's going to almost look like a different color. If we don't cover the whole tree, it will give us another dimension. So on the opposite side of the tree than where our shadow is, we want to put dark green foliage. So I'm using the same green that I used before, and I'm starting to give my tree sort of a fluffy look. So I'm just using little rounded strokes just on the outside of that tree. So it's the same green that I had before, and I can make my tree a little bit bigger, a little bit, some funny edges on it if I want. It doesn't have to be a perfectly rounded tree, or I could leave it rounded. And if your shadow on your tree looks too perfect and you want it to blend a little bit, then we'll just add some clear water, and I'm just pulling up into the tree so it changes that hard edge and softens it. So I'm going to do that. on all of my shadows. So I'm pulling that right into the tree, just with clear water. And it just softens that hard line.
So you're adding green or you're just using a wet brush?
No, I'm using clear water where my shadow was in the tree, and I'm just blending that into the tree just with clear water, just to soften that edge. So it's just clear water and just pulling into the tree just to soften any really hard lines you might have. So if you want to soften that up, you just pull that into the tree and it will lighten it up, but leave the shadow there. So from the shoreline, with just clear water on your brush from the shoreline, we're going to start to pull down. So I'm only using clear water. I'm going to rinse my brush, get it wet again, and I'm just going to pull from the shoreline down, just with clear water. I just want a damp or wet brush. I'm just pulling the reflections down into the water. So the reflections can start to come down a little bit farther, but the bulk of the color will remain up above. Again, I'm just pulling down. If my brush gets dry, I'm just wetting it again. I'm just pulling down. So you can start to see that the reflection is right into the water. We have two more steps. We'll just go again with clear water. At the very top of our reflection, we'll just go from side to side, just very gently, 2 or 3 times, and then you can stop just that you see you pulled some of that color down and it's going from side to side. And then you can decide where you're going to put your artist signature. So I like to put mine right into the picture. It's entirely up to you where you put yours. But I like mine to be right in the picture, part of the picture. And so I've signed right underneath that far tree. And we didn't talk about lifting off, but one of the things that we can do, or you could try with your trees, which gives a whole nother dimension, is with a wet brush or damp brush. And I'll just do my center tree. So if I use the wet brush on my center tree, I tap it off because I pulled off some color, so I've still got a damp brush. If I start to pull or lift, I can actually put a space in the center of my tree where I've taken the color off. So now I don't want my tree to look bald in the middle. That's exactly what I've done, but so I'm just going to add some color back there. But if I wanted to leave a little whiter spot on the side of this tree by lifting paint off, by rubbing gently with a damp brush, tapping off any color I pick off, tapping again, I'm picking off color. So I can leave a white space in my tree. If I want that outline to still be green, but the center to be lifted off, then that's an easy way to change the dimension of your tree. So they can all look a little bit different just by lifting off in certain areas. So I could lift off in the brown area on this tree if I choose. So I've got a little bald spot over here. And if I want to, I could just put a little bit of extra green in there just so it's not quite so stark. But that's just something that you can do with lifting off, which is a fun technique. And I know some of you are still painting, so we're not ready for a collage. But that's what you can do in 1 hour. Actually, less than an hour. So there's lots of different things that you could do with these trees too, if you decided that you wanted them to be springtime trees or you wanted them to be apple trees or some fruit-bearing trees. Then I can go ahead, let me just put some berries on a tree and we'll see what that looks like. So I could make it an apple tree, or with fall coming, which would be kind of pretty. We could have some of that foliage changing on a different tree. So we could put some brightness on the one side of the tree that gets the sun and leave the green on the other side. And I could add a little bit of yellow because that's colors that come with the changing of the seasons. So you can make this whatever you want, but you've got the idea, you've got the background, you've got the grass is growing behind the trees. You've got the water in front, the nice sky. You could put clouds in your sky if you wanted to. You could get a little more technical with some of your trees and have some sticks coming out here and there. You could put some branches in your tree. Just to give it another little bit of detail, that's up to you. You could totally have it be a flowering tree. So if I wanted that to be a flowering tree and show that it actually has buds on it or some kind of flower, I could put some little dots. So I'm just giving you some other ideas what you can do, but the basic 5 trees with the reflection was what this was all about. So there's basically 5 different trees now, but hopefully you've enjoyed that.